you should encourage your senators to withhold unanimous consent. That is very important because we do want them to actually delay everything as much as possible, to be sticklers for Robert's rules. This person is just flat out wrong. May I please speak to this as the parliamentarian for my local chapter? Go for it. Oh yeah, no, I know I'm correct. Yeah, no, go for it. Explain how this guy's wrong. Um I feel like I feel like yeah, you can hop into the waiting room on the Discord and talk about it. We'll talk about it. But I feel like checking the several different timestamps that this person specifically mentions and seeing nothing that they are citing is grounds enough to be like, you fucked up somehow. Either you're lying or you're just woefully wrong about what you're talking about. Let's talk with Lady Ringcloud as the parliamentarian for her local chapter. Ooh, hello.
Hi.
Howdy.
Parliamentarian for my chapter is not actually an official thing yet, but we're discussing it at the next meeting. And it's been something I've been having to do as the person in the chapter that knows a lot about the Roberts rules. And I
Hell yeah.
wanted to do this for chat to understand what unanimous consent is in terms of parliamentary procedure in the House and the Senate.
Yeah.
Most of the time, for day-to-day operations of the House, unanimous consent is assumed and procedures move through. What can happen is for every single procedure, a, a member of Congress, usually it's the majority leader or a chair, can request unanimous consent on a motion or on a bill, on an amendment. The presiding officer will seek for objections. If there are no objections, it is approved immediately. If even one member objects, the request for unanimous consent is denied, and the issue must go through the normal process, which includes debate, vote, calling the question, those sorts of things, right?
Mhm.
And so what we're trying to get senators and Congress people to do is, as Jack said, it was so hard to do this stuff in chat, obviously. Jack, you are right. You
Yeah.
are correct. 100%. But for chat to understand what we're asking them to do, we are asking them to literally throw a wrench in the clockwork, because so much of the day-to-day operations of the House is through assumed unanimous consent, where it's never called for. It's just assumed it's there, and they move on. Another thing that they can do is they can demand a quorum check every day for everything. And if a quorum check goes through and quorum is not met, the business of the House cannot be conducted until quorum is met.
Yep.
So it's those two things that we should be, I think, teaching people to call their local representatives and request unanimous consent on everything, request quorum checks on everything. It will grind the Senate to a halt. It will take days to get through one thing where it might take a single day beforehand, because they can be like, the representatives from such and such rises, and I'd like to make a motion is in whatever, and I'd like to call for, and another member raises, I want to call for, Mr. Speaker, I want to call for quorum check, or I request unanimous consent, and they can do that on everything,
Yep.
every bill, every amendment, every motion, everything, and they should be doing it, which is why Hakeem Jeffries, little piss baby, we
Yep.
got leverage. It's their government. He's literally talking out his ass. They can shut the Senate down, or at least delay every single procedure, it's going to be boring.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be nasty. It's going to be, oh, but it's not decorum. It's not procedure. It's not how things are done. It's so rude to do this.
Yep.
Oh, well, the Republicans have been making shit up since day one and doing whatever they want. So,
Exactly.
you know, it's just this thing that, like, when people are yelling at the Dems, as we should be, I
Get,
think they misconstrue things because there's a difference between unanimous consent and unanimous vote,
yep.
right? Like the wordings of the Roberts rules and stuff. And this is one of those things where, why don't we teach this in school? Because the average person has no idea how the Senate works.
Oh, the average person doesn't even know Robert's rules
No,
exist.
they, well, sure. I mean, like, they don't know. For example, did you know that the Speaker of the House, if a quorum, if like senators or people get up and walk out, if quorum is not met, it is actually a possibility for, I believe it's the Speaker, to call for a quorum check with the Master of Arms. And if a quorum check is not present, they can send the Master at Arms out to arrest enough senators or Congress people to make a quorum check and bring them back by force under protest and have quorum. So, like, there's all kinds of procedures in the day-to-day operations of the House and the workings of the House that the average person, it's not like a Roberts Rules thing. It's just most Americans don't know how the House works at all.
And to be honest, most elected officials in Congress also don't really know all of Robert's rules. They
Yeah, they don't.
mostly just know enough to get by.
That's
And
true. Yeah.
and so it's like I do think I think from here on out, I think that's actually good to add, like, you know, call for quorum or deny
Mhm.
quorum, and you know, deny unanimous consent.
Yeah,
You know,
those are two things that they can be doing. And
to our calls
like
for action.
yeah, Gamer G's got it. Like they actually did it in Indiana. They walked out and hid to avoid being arrested and brought in for quorum check. So it's like it's something that they can do, because of course it would be Capitol Police that would have to go and find the members, arrest them, and bring them in
Yep.
if they're not in the Capitol. What are you gonna do there? So anyway, yeah, I know I
Yeah.
promised this would be very, very, very short. I'm sorry.
No,
I
it's
just
okay.
yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much for the clear and concise explanation.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
bye.
Um, Sophie Bliss, thank you for the gifted membership. I appreciate that. Um, but yeah, this should be part of our like day-to-day calls to action because, you know, at the very least, it will show you how full of shit someone like Hakeem Jeffries is for like hand wringing and saying, "Oh, there's nothing we can do," because there's absolutely stuff that they can do. There are absolutely procedural moves beyond those two big ones that they can do to like throw sand in the gears of this entire shebang. Um, and so, you know, quorum calls, for those of you who don't know, most of Congress doesn't tend to be in Congress, in the actual body of the room, when they vote on this stuff. There are often large chunks of Congress missing, either out of state or abroad, etc. And like that's that's important. Like if they are not there and you demand a call for quorum, they got to get there, you know? You found it? What is this?
Mr. President. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that notwithstanding Rule 22, the post-cloture time with respect to the Kennedy nomination expire at 10:30 a.m. Thursday, February 13th. I further ask that following disposition of the Kennedy nomination, the cloture motion with respect to the Rollins nomination
Wait, when is this? From yesterday?
be withdrawn and Senate vote on confirmation of the Rollins nomination with no intervening action or debate. Further, following disposition of the Rollins nomination, the Senate resume consideration of the Lutnick nomination and the Senate vote on the motion to invoke cloture on the Lutnick nomination at 1:45 p.m. And if cloture is invoked on the Lutnick nomination, all time be considered expired, and the Senate vote on the motion to invoke cloture on the Loeffler nomination, and if cloture is invoked on the Loeffler nomination, all post-cloture time be expired, and the Senate vote on confirmation of the Loeffler and Lutnick nominations at a time to be determined by the Majority Leader in consultation with the Democrat Leader no earlier than Tuesday, February the 18th.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate resume legislative session be in a period of morning business for debate only, with senators permitted to speak therein. Consent by the nomination.
Oh, here it is.
Disease of polio that disabled my father since
he could have
him.
of and
run, but not research and medical. I encourage with you.
Okay.
And I respect consent that notwithstanding Rule 22, the post-cloture time with respect to the Kennedy nomination expire at 10:30 a.m. Thursday, February the 13th. I further ask that following disposition of the Kennedy nomination, the cloture motion with respect to the Rollins nomination be withdrawn and Senate vote on confirmation of the Rollins nomination with no intervening action or debate. Further, following disposition of the Rollins nomination, the Senate resume consideration of the Lutnick nomination and the Senate vote on the motion to invoke cloture on the Lutnick nomination at 1:45 p.m. And if cloture is invoked on the Lutnick nomination, all time be considered expired, and the Senate vote on the motion to invoke cloture.
I am calling a quorum check on Chat's wallets. 218 donos by force.
Abyssalist, thank you for the $10 dono. I appreciate it.
On the Loeffler nomination, and if cloture is invoked on the Loeffler nomination, all post-cloture time be expired, and the Senate vote on confirmation of the Loeffler and Lutnick nominations at a time to be determined by the Majority Leader in consultation with the Democrat Leader no earlier than Tuesday, February the 18th.
Without objection.
Okay, so I am not up on all of the rules here, but like they could have forced debate for a long time. Is that the case? Because I am not up on Robert's rules. I got to be honest with you guys. I just was not able to find this particular clip in what they were saying. Yeah, you can jump back in and explain this to me, Lady Raincloud. I'm like a warlord with no knowledge of how this works. I need someone learned to explain it to me. All right.
Okay. All right.
What is
Sorry.
this?
1 second. God damn it. All right. 1 second. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you great.
Okay. God damn it. Can you hear me now? I think.
I can hear you great.
Okay, cool. I'm not coming through. Okay, you're not coming through my speakers, I hope.
Nope, can't hear you.
Okay,
Or
so
can't hear
that
me.
right there, that was a unanimous consent check, right?
Yeah.
I rise to ask for without intervening debate or action.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw, as I explained, the presiding speaker, Mr. President, because they call the speaker Mr. President, right?
Yeah.
Said without objection, there were none. Unanimous consent goes forth. Everything that person just rose to motion for goes through. No debate, no delay, no action, no conversation, no votes, no calling the question, no nothing.
Yeah.
And what could have happened is, Mr. President, I rise to call for unanimous consent without debating, blah, blah, blah. And when the speaker said without objection, any single member present could have risen, not even the Dems, but any single member present could have risen in objection and said, I object. And that then moves to the next steps of the objection of unanimous consent, which is an intervening debate period, and then a vote to continue after the fact, or like where they go through debate and then someone can basically call the question, which is we have to vote on do we continue the debate or not, and then I would like someone rises to motion to do something else, and then it would just basically that whole thing, if one person that was a Dem had risen and objected, that would have been the next several hours worth of the working day that they could have just stopped by objecting to that unanimous consent request. And not a single one of them did, which is what this person was complaining about. I'm glad we found it because now we know that that person wasn't lying or wrong. This was a massive issue.
What is he mentioned a couple of times in there a cloture motion?
Oh, yeah, that is so I'm not sure how to the idea of a cloture motion is not something I'm particularly familiar with. I think it's like a legal thing if I can find it. Let me take a look real quick. Is there how it was spelled?
Yeah, I think it's spelled Cloture.
CLO. Oh, yeah. To bring to close the debate on any measure, motion, or other matter pending before the Senate or the unfinished business must be signed by at least 16 senators, and with few exceptions may be presented at any time. So that's basically cloture procedure. Basically relates to I would like to close the business that we are currently dealing with. If that makes sense.
Okay.
So when he says a cloture motion, I wanna close debate. I no more motions, no other matter on the or unfinished business. Kind of want to be done with this if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, is that something that he can just do as like head of the Senate? Or not Senate. Yes, this was in the Senate.
Well, basically the idea of the cloture is that it's a legislative procedure that they can end a filibuster or limit debate on a bill or a nomination.
Mm-hmm.
Invoking cloture normally requires a supermajority, so it's 60 out of 100
Okay.
to proceed to final vote on the issue being debated. And so the idea there also is that if it's a supermajority, 60 out of 100 senators, they don't have a supermajority in the Senate, right? So Democratic senators would have had to have agreed to that cloture motion for it to go through because it's a supermajority vote instead of a simple majority vote.
But do they need that for? Because they don't need a supermajority for confirmations, right? Which is how they're
Um,
getting all of these people through.
well, I mean, they could have tried to vote them through as a slate. I don't really know, but the process is that the senator rose to file the cloture motion, which has to be signed by 16 senators. Then you got a waiting period of a legislative day. If the cloture is invoked, you've got further debate limited to 30 additional hours, which is what the Dems have been doing, as far as I understand. And it's I very this isn't something like in Robert's rules in smaller groups that is usually a thing that happens. But it's basically a way to kill filibusters and kill debate and say, I want this to just be done, if I understand it correctly. Because I know a lot about Robert's rules, but not everything.
Yeah.
Right? So the idea is if they invoke cloture, it requires a supermajority for that to completely go through. So there would be, I think, that the problems that this individual would have had with all of this, watching all of this, which again, I'm glad we now know that it wasn't wrong and it wasn't a lie. It was just we couldn't find it. Was the Dems basically showed in this nomination procedure that they did nothing really of any substantial value to slow it down or stop it. Because any one of them could have objected, any one of them could have risen. You'll also notice how many chairs were empty. Something else that most people don't know, the average day-to-day business of the House very rarely has quorum.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I was talking about the last conversation, calling quorum checks for every vote could substantially slow the House down.
Yeah.
Because you've got members that are usually out doing things as well, and they have someone either like voting in absentia or like they're not present or whatever. And so like, as long as they have the bare minimum to consider things to be the people's business being done, they can sort of just do it. And so this is an example of when he did that cloture, as far as I understand it. And my doc says it's in like some deep rule of the Senate rules, and it was something in the 1910s to 1920s time frame that this was introduced, the cloture. So like, I don't really know a lot about that one. I'm sorry. I don't want to make shit up.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm like just going down this rabbit hole on this a little bit.
Well, I think it's interesting because it sort of helps maybe teach chat about what they should be asking their representatives and senators to do.
Yeah.
Because if you call and leave a message and you actually bring up a specific operational rule of the Senate and the House that you maybe want them, like you said, maybe they don't know about it, which
Oh,
as an elected official.
okay. Wait, I found this. On
Okay.
November 21st of 2013, the Senate reversed a ruling of the presiding officer and through the reversal reinterpreted Senate Rule 22 to require only a majority to invoke cloture
Oh,
on presidential nominations,
okay.
except those to the Supreme Court. So
Okay.
basically, 12 years ago, they did like a reverse Uno and said, well, you don't really need 60, you only need 50 to invoke cloture.
51.
Or 50.
51.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could be that in this particular instance, the Republican in the Senate can like unilaterally say like request unanimous consent of just like his party. Is that
No, unanimous consent means unanimous consent.
okay? So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not enough that like they just go along party lines.
No,
Okay,
unanimous. It's the same with a quorum check too, right? Like, if you don't have quorum, you cannot conduct the people's business.
gotcha.
But it normally happens anyway. So with unanimous consent, it means unanimous consent of all members. Now, maybe there's an interpretation of members present on the Hill or in the building versus not, but like that would be the Republicans trying to change things because specifically that objection to unanimous consent then starts like debate and vote and all that other stuff that happens.
Okay,
It's supposed to, unless again the Republicans have just changed shit,
yeah,
which they seem to do when they're in power. So, and maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe things have changed. Maybe my Robert's Rules book is wrong, or it's old or whatever. But like the way I understand it, unanimous consent is just assumed, and if no one objects, things move forward. If someone objects, they have to get unanimous consent, and that unanimous consent comes in the form of, do we have unanimous consent to continue forward with the business, whatever that business is, not a vote. It's not like, hey, are we going to vote to pass this bill? It's, I'm asking unanimous consent to move forward with the vote on this bill. Someone rises and objects. Then they go through, do we have unanimous consent to move forward to the vote for the bill? Does that make sense at all?
yeah. No, that makes sense. I
Yeah.
I I found like an explainer on cloture, and I'm just reading it.
Okay,
So
cool. Am I wrong? Yeah.
I'll just read what it says here. And I'm not saying it disagrees with you, but it says in the absence of unanimous consent, the Senate must consider each nomination separately. The question of confirmation is a debatable one in the Senate and may require a cloture process in order to end debate and reach a vote. Under
Yeah.
current Senate precedents, invoking cloture on a nomination requires majority support, and most nominations are subject to a maximum of 2 additional hours of post-cloture debate. Absent unanimous consent, the steps to confirm a nomination include the Senate votes on a non-debatable motion to proceed to executive session to take up a nomination on the executive calendar. The majority leader or his designee files cloture on the nomination. The Senate must wait 2 session days before voting on cloture, absent unanimous consent to alter this ripening period. The Senate
Mhm.
can conduct other business during these 2 days and usually does. 2 days of session later, the Senate votes on cloture. The rule requires that the vote to invoke cloture be a roll call vote. If a
Yes.
majority of senators voting support cloture, then cloture is invoked and further consideration of the nomination is limited. The Senate conducts post cloture debate on the nomination for all but the highest ranking nominations. The maximum time for consideration of a nomination after cloture is invoked is 2 hours. Once cloture is invoked on a matter, the Senate can consider other business during during the post cloture period only by unanimous consent. After post cloture debate time expires, or when no senator seeks to discuss the nomination further, the Senate votes on the nomination. Confirmation requires majority support. The motion
Yeah.
to consider the confirmation vote is routinely, by unanimous consent, considered made and laid upon the table. This final parliamentary step prevents the possibility of a revote on the nomination and immediately returns the approved nomination to the president.
Yep.
That's interesting. I'm learning a lot.
Yes. Um, as everybody should be, I take in this. Why did I say that like that? I'm glad you are. And I think we all should be. Like, I'm not asking everybody to go learn Robert's rules or go grab the book. I'm trying to direct people towards the weaponry, the tactics that the Dems actually do have that they are not using.
Yes.
So, and they could. I mean, imagine if like you just read through all of that, right? So
Yeah.
imagine if like someone had risen to object to unanimous consent, and then the nomination, instead of being delayed for 30 hours, was, as the explainer said, delayed for multiple days.
Well, so
Yeah.
I looked that up, and apparently after Democrats delayed for 30 hours last time,
Mm.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune filed uh, for cloture in advance for Kennedy's nomination.
Oh.
So the waiting period had gone through. Yeah, it's all messy, and like no one's saying, "Yep, this is exactly what we're doing," but like it seems kind of like whew, there are a lot of pieces moving.
Yeah, I mean, and for chat, like, this is parliamentary procedure. This is how all parliamentary democracy works. At least most, if not all. Um, but it is, yeah, it is something that, like, the Dems have so many procedural things that are taken for granted as just, we just sort of hand wave it,
Yeah,
that they could stand up and object to everything and make just annoy the ever loving hell out of the Republicans and make now. But the reason I think they don't want to do that is because it's one of those things where it multiplies the time it takes to get things done, and it doesn't look good, and it's boring, and it's slow, and it's tedious, and it really gums up the works, and might the Dems have normally been the ones to go see the Republicans can't get anything done, and if they gum up the works of the House, maybe they're afraid it'll look bad on them, I guess, or something. Like, I
yeah.
don't know what's your thought?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it is just they don't want to rock the boat too much. They don't want to be rude.
Yeah.
You know.
The
And I think the more they realize that people have actually looked at the rules and they want very specific things, um, they want very specific things from their elected officials. And I think a lot of democratic inaction relies on folks not really knowing the full
mm,
power of these elected officials, because if you don't know their full power, then you can't ask them to do things.
yeah.
Um, so thank you
Yeah.
for jumping in and explaining all this and getting the
You're welcome.
conversation going.
Yeah, I hope if I screwed anything up, got anything wrong, feel free to not make the stream segment out of it, or just make one and edit me out completely.
It's all
It's
good.
fine.
I think you added a lot, so thank you very
Okay,
much.
awesome. Thank you. All right, bye.
See ya. Um, yeah, no, like they need to be rocking the boat. They need to be taking these procedural steps. And you guys saw just like on this one question how easy it is to get twisted and like involved into parliamentarian like maneuvering, right? Like the goal for Dems in the minority should be that every single like Republican has to pull out their Robert's Rules of Order in order to understand what exactly is happening. You know, like we need someone who knows the deep magic. You know, the magic that was formed at the beginning. Um, we need someone to cast the magic spells in Congress in order to you know, essentially turn it into one gigantic game of Magic the Gathering, okay? That's what we need right now. We need Congress to save Dooley. Hashtag justice for Dooley. True. Also, I'm going to take down my post saying that this was not true, because that clearly was true. I'm not sure how much the Dems collaborated with the Republicans versus how they like whether or not they dropped the ball, but either way. Just shared the stream because of this discussion on quorum checks and unanimous consent. Hell yeah. Learning new things every day, making our brains wrinklier by the minute. All right. Let's see what else is going on here.
This is not a game. No. This is not politics as usual. No. These are people's lives we are talking about. These are veterans' lives we're talking about. Yes. The lives of their families, the lives of the dedicated VA employees who serve them. Yes. So to President Musk and President Trump, have you ever sat with a veteran during a PTSD episode? Yes. No, never said. Have you ever helped a veteran learn to walk after losing a limb? No. Have you ever worked through mountains of paperwork to make sure a veteran's family gets the benefits they deserve? No. The very VA staff you are attacking do this every single day. Yes. We're not going to fight. We're not just going to fight this. We're going to fight this with everything we got. Yeah. 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 Because when you come after VA staff, you're coming after our veterans. Yes. And if you think we're going to stand by quietly while you dismantle the support system our veterans depend on, you have grossly miscalculated. Yes, sir. To every VA employee, your work is sacred. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's God's work. Yes, sir, it is. Your dedication is noticed. Yes. Your role is essential. And we will not, I repeat, we will not let them throw you aside. No, sir. And to our veterans, we see this for what it is. Yes, sir. A direct attack on your care, your privacy, your dignity, and we're going to fight like hell to protect both you and the people who serve you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Guy, kind of a sleeper speaker. Good. Like I was not expecting a whole lot from this guy, but he's surprised. We got Amy Klobuchar. How's the Klob do here?
What do you think happens In less than a month in office, the president has already disrupted the VA's critical work, including by initially stopping the department from hiring nurses, doctors, and hospital support staff, just when there's a shortage of medical staff across the country. But
So do something about it. Delay them. Do something. Introduce legislation. Yeah, sure, it might be doomed to fail. Make them make it fail. Make them vote against good things.
thanks to public pressure, thanks to the people behind me, they
Did she ever apologize for being abusive to staffers? Fuck no, she didn't.
walk that back. But they're still not hiring into critical positions like people that work with claims. That means, and those of us in Congress understand that, we get the calls when our veterans need the help. They served and we should have their backs. The president also illegally froze support for veterans and their families, fired the VA's top nonpartisan watchdog. And by the way, there's a reason it's sunny today, because they might have fired the watchdog, but we are putting sunshine on what they're doing today. They fired the directors of offices serving women's veterans, the largest growing group of veterans, and they attacked initiatives that make it easier for rural and disabled veterans to access VA benefits. None of this is going to make life better for our veterans. None of this treats our employees at the VA with the dignity they deserve.
The thing is, the thing about all of these appearances and speeches that these folks give, it's great to see them out there uh, actually saying the right things. But needs to happen what needs to happen is that they need to bring this into mainstream media. They need to go and make appearances, do the interviews, talk with their local news stations, like I'm sure there are news people and networks available to them to use for these purposes. And like they need to use them. It's not enough to just do these speeches outside of the VA and yeah, it's great that you guys set this up. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad that we on this stream can watch it happen, but we need more. And to be fair to the people in the Senate, generally they are doing a bit more than what the Democrats in the House are doing. But you need to be doing a bit more than a bit more. That's a low bar. You're barely clearing. They've gone on cable news, but not local news, which, local news is where most Americans watch news if they watch it on TV. Yeah. They need to be talking with their veteran groups. They need to be talking with, the people who are being affected. They need to be, moving this through, I don't know, the Military Times or something. You gotta do more. There are networks and powers you have not even begun to use. And it needs to start being utilized. So it's just very... The resistance is very flaccid. And largely that seems to be because they're just not used to doing it. So hopefully they start being a bit more militant, literally go on podcasts. If you can't get your local Sinclair news station to do it, go on Hassan's show. Go on I don't know, the Pod Save America or something. Go on, act like it's a presidential campaign. Go on everything. Go on Rogan, for fuck's sake. But it's frustrating, Go on Riverboat Jack's stream. Exactly. You guys get it. Anyway, the big news story here with the military is just that, like, at the very least, the one core group that definitely is going to know exactly who fucked them over are veterans and currently serving members of the military. They are all going to be very keenly aware that Donald Trump and Elon Musk fucked them. And that's not insignificant. That's what we got 9 million vets, like what, a million in the armed forces like currently active. Yeah, 1.3 million active duty. Like that's 10 million folks is nothing to turn your nose up at. Especially, when they're trained in military arts, just throwing that out there. So, all I'm saying here is that I feel a bit better that if the fascist shit hits the fan, there's going to be a lot of people who are like, I'm not taking a bullet for the guy who wants to cut my VA benefits. I'm not taking a bullet for the guy who wants me to not get medical care after I'm done serving. Yeah, like I don't think so. I don't think they want that. So that makes me feel a little bit better, even in the midst of all of these terrible things happening. And I know that is the worst case scenario, but honestly, being able to make the worst case scenario less likely, it makes me feel a little bit better. I'm not gonna lie. Still think it's when, not if. Well, yeah, we're still in the middle of that tension, that constitutional crisis tension, and it does kind of remain to be seen what happens here. They are going to try and overstep, and it might very well be when Elon Musk starts poking around through the Department of Defense. We'll see. We still in the cool zone? We are still very much in the cool zone. Nothing has really been resolved about the constitutional crisis we're in. And it might be a bit before like some of these court cases go to the Supreme Court and the Trump administration really tries to force this question. And then we see like how the Supreme Court rules. I do think if the Supreme Court rules against Donald Trump and he continues to disregard the courts, then we're going to see something happen. And it's not going to be good. May you live in interesting times certainly is a curse.